Hi everyone and welcome to another video at Neo FPV, where today we're going to be looking at Failsafe. Particularly we're going to be looking at Failsafe on the TBS Vendetta. As you know, this is my latest and greatest, and I'm a big fan of this quad, despite the issues that I have had and are well documented that are currently being resolved. We're going to be looking at Failsafe with the Taranis, and of course if you've been following my videos you'll know that I'm using the XSR Mini inside the Taranis. We're going to look at different ways that you can, we're going to talk about the different ways that you can set up Failsafe, where you need to look, the Taranis receiver transmitter side, and also how to set up the no pulse method, which is actually the simplest method I've found. And we're also going to look at what to check in Cleanflight, which you shouldn't really need to touch. It's all configured straight out the box, but it's worth just checking and knowing what settings there are there to check. So we'll take a look at that too. Obviously I've got the tools required to do this. Again, nothing more special than a wrench to take off the props, safety first, and standard 2mm hex driver. I'll get the Vendetta ripped apart, dismantled, or should I say, and then we can look at the next steps for checking and installing, or configuring if you like, Failsafe. Okay guys, so as you can see now, we've got the Vendetta apart and all the parts are all laid out there. I won't go over anything to do that because we've already done that in a previous video. That was video 1 if you haven't seen it. So here we're mainly going to be concentrating on this part, the main guts of the Vendetta. And more specifically what we're looking at is the receiver, which I've got strapped in here. Now I just want to mention that the actual placement of this receiver is really important. So I had an issue where my channels were switching. What was happening was I was setting the channels in my goggles to say A1, and I was setting the Vendetta's channel in the OSD on screen to channel A1, and what was happening was it was automatically changing to another channel, and the channels were mismatching, and I couldn't for the life of me work out why. And what it actually happened to end up being was that there's a little button, where is it? There it is. There's a little button just up in this corner here, and the XSR was actually resting on top of that button, and that's the button that if you want to manually change the channel on the Unity Pro without using the OSD, you can tap that button. And it didn't really occur to me until someone mentioned it on Facebook, and then I thought, oh, actually I should really check that. And when I did, and I couldn't actually tell whether it was sitting on top of that button, but I just moved it around. I took out this style extension, the servo type extension, cut off the servo connector that was provided on this cable, and just soldered it directly to the XSR connector here. And that allowed me to free up a little bit of space, and just enough space to get enough slack on this to move it over to the edge. So really I'm mentioning this because it's important when you're dealing with this transmitter, this receiver, that you're ensuring that you're putting it in a place which is not going to sit on top of that button. So when we put this back together, we're going to make sure that we try and get it exactly where it is now, which is quite important. So you can see that it's sat just above and slightly to the right, slightly over to the right, and this Unity Pro it's flush in the bottom left. So we won't have to take that out, we're going to be dealing with this today, but it's just important to know that when you put this back in, to make sure it's not sat on top of that button. So I'm going to take off this electrical tape which I've put on. You want to use, if you are taping it in, you want to make sure you're using the least amount of tape as possible, because not for weight reasons really, because obviously this tape doesn't weigh a lot, but you want to be using the least amount possible because of heat. So you don't want to be insulating these parts, especially this OSD Pro too much, because obviously this is insulation tape, so it will insulate, and you want to try and get as much airflow to these parts as possible, especially this Unity. So you'll see that I've not taped around this side over the top of the Unity, because I want to get a nice, allow for a nice amount of airflow into this part. So I've taken that tape off. We'll have to replace that tape because it's all got grass on it now, and you'll be able to see a little bit more clearly now the little button that I was talking about earlier. It's just here, and what was happening was this white part of the XSR was just sat right on top and pushing that down, which was what was causing the channel mismatch, so beware of that. So with this out now, you'll see also, you can probably see that I've routed both the antennas up one side, and that's to avoid this yellow cable here for the camera. You can see it just running up there, because that will also cause interference. I still have an issue with interference, and I believe that's down to a faulty connection between the pigtail and the VTX antenna, but hopefully TBS will be able to sort that out. But that's not what we're here for today. So we're here to look at the failsafe, and to do the failsafe there's a number of different options. Two of them involved hitting this FS button on the underside of the XSR. One of them involves just hitting that, and it's called no pulse, and that's the one we're going to try and use today. The other one involves setting all the channels, all the sticks and everything to basically 0, or what you could consider off, and then you do a similar push of the FS button to set the failsafe, and that should be it. But we're not going to do that. We're just going to use the nice simple method, and then we're going to take a look in Cleanflight, make sure that Cleanflight is set to how it should be, and then we're going to test it. So we're going to test it with props off, of course, safety first as ever. So we'll put the Vendetta back together once we've done the configuration for the failsafe, and yeah, we'll see if it works. So let's get the configuration done for the failsafe now. Cool, so you'll see that I've put the arms back on the Vendetta, and I've also added the antenna, because what I want to do is I want to power it up and just prove that I've not configured failsafe. So what's prompted me is I've got a race, my first race this weekend, and one of the requirements is that you need to be able to prove that failsafe is configured and working. I just assumed that it was going to be set up on the Vendetta by default, and it is partially, as we spoke about earlier, but obviously with different receivers and different transmitters and stuff, that they can't possibly have it working out the box. So I'm just going to quickly go grab a LiPo, plug it in, and then I'm just going to show you that the motors will just continue to do what they were told last when you lose or disconnect the transmitter. One LiPo. So everything looks good, so I'm just going to power this up now.
Welcome to OpenTX. Switch warning.
So once the Vendetta has picked up the fact that the transmitter is connected, we lose that nasty beeping sound, which is great. And I'm now just going to arm the Vendetta.
Welcome to OpenTX. Switch warning.
So as you've seen, the motors just continue to spin once the transmitter has been turned off, which is obviously not what we're looking for. I don't know, there was something quite satisfying about watching those just spin there for some reason. Not quite sure how long you should leave it. I'm assuming it shouldn't be more than a couple of seconds. So what I'm going to do now is carefully disconnect the Vendetta, remove the Triumph antenna, disconnect the arms again, and then we'll have a go at configuring that failsafe. So I've connected this switch, which is just something I made at home. It just allows me to have a LiPo plugged in without having to keep unplugging and plugging it into the XT60 connector down there. Just saves a little bit of wear and tear. All I have to do is just switch this switch and it turns it on. And so basically the two methods. One is the setting all your throttle and everything, all your switches and everything to 0, and setting the failsafe that way, or there's the no pulse method. So I'll talk about the other method first because that's the one we're not going to do. But basically it's exactly the same, but you set the switches and all the sticks down to their neutral positions. Once they are all down to the neutral positions, you turn on the Vendetta or your quad. You press the little FS button on the receiver, and then you turn off the transmitter and you turn off the quad. And basically what that does is it sets the failsafe to 0 for those switches and those sticks, which is fine. But there's a far simpler method, and that is just to not involve the transmitter at all, and we just use the receiver. And basically all you do is exactly the same. You turn it on, press the FS button, and then turn it off. And basically what that's saying is that's 0. That's what you need. That's what I want you to do, and you lose signal. So we're going to try and do that now. We're going to see how that works. If it works, great. We're going to we'll test it by putting all the motors and everything back together. We'll test it. If that works, great. If it doesn't, we'll have another go. And what we'll also do is, regardless of whether it works or not, we'll have a quick look at Cleanflight and just see what settings there are in there and which ones to check. But as I say, those all should be set by default. So let's try that. Let's try getting this thing into failsafe. So I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to press the failsafe button, and then I'm going to turn it off. So that should be it. Simple as that. So I'm going to now just quickly plug the arms back on. We're going to turn it on now, and then we're going to get the Taranis bound, and then we're going to turn the Taranis off, and hopefully the motors will disarm.
Welcome to OpenTX. Switch warning.
So back to how we were. We can see that the Taranis is now bound, no nasty beeping, so let's arm.
Welcome to OpenTX. Switch warning.
So that didn't work. So I hope you can see that this is all this is all live. This is not staged in any way. So that did not work. So let's have another go. And maybe I didn't leave it on long enough after I pressed the FS failsafe button. So let's have another go.
Critical telemetry lost.
I'm going to turn this off because this is not involved. Let's try again.
Welcome to OpenTX. Switch warning.
Or ARM.
Welcome to OpenTX. Switch warning.
That's not working. So I'm going to go back to the manual now, and I'm going to have another read, and we'll see what we're doing wrong. And we're back. I think I might have solved the issue. So, you know, it goes back to saying that you think you should read, you know, RTFM, read the manual, and you should be good. And that's what I've done. I've read the manual. I read it 3 or 4 times in its, you know, pseudo English, and it's, you know, it seemed to make perfect sense what you needed to do, but it again is wrong, and it's one of the biggest frustrations is that you get the manual and you think you've got all the information that you need, and you haven't. But I guess that's why I'm creating these videos, is so I go through this pain so you don't have to. So I haven't done anything else other than what you've seen in the video to the receiver, to the Vendetta and the receiver side. So I've just done exactly the same as what I tried it a couple of times, you know, turning it on, pressing the button, waiting for the green light to flash, turning it off, arming it, testing it, and no change. So I started to do a bit of digging. I put some posts up on the forums and stuff, and someone suggested, I think his name was Andrew, he suggested that I had a look on the receiver, which seems, the transmitter, sorry, which seems a little bit back to front, because you think that all the failsafe information would be in the receiver side, and it wouldn't need to be configured on the transmitter. However, I'll show you what we looked at. So turn on the receiver.
Welcome to OpenTX.
And I went into the menu, then I went to page up, and went all the way to failsafe mode. And what it was set to was receiver, which seems to be the default. That was what it was set to, and that didn't seem to work. So what I changed it to was no pulses. Clicked enter, wait for it to stop flashing, go to exit, back to the main screen. As you can see, it's not connected. We'll turn on the Vendetta. As you can see, everything seems to be okay. It's all bound. We'll arm. And now we'll disconnect. And there we go, failsafe is working. So if you're having that issue, that is one thing which I did not find in the manual, something which I found out through the really useful Vendetta Facebook group. Big thanks to Andrew for that information. I'll just find out who that was exactly. It was Andrew Baum, which he seems to be very active on the Vendetta group, seems to be a really knowledgeable guy. So thanks very much for that little tip there, Andrew. Real big help. So the last thing to do is really just to show you what to check in Cleanflight. If you have any issues, this is not working, then you need to check Cleanflight. So we'll just go and have a look at that now, and I'll come back to you in a second. So here we are now. We've got Cleanflight up on the screen, and you won't be able to see this now because you'll see what I've got on the screen. But I'm going to plug in the USB cable to the Vendetta. You'll see up the top here it's green, it says it's ready to connect, but it's not, obviously. So I'm just going to plug in the Vendetta now. With some nice flashy lights, and you'll see now that it's switched over here to USB. If it's not selected, then just select USB. Click connect, and then we have a nice lovely picture. You can pick the quad up, move it around just to make sure that it's definitely connected. So there's not much really to look at in Cleanflight for Failsafe. What you need to do is just go to the Failsafe tab on the left hand side here. Just make sure, as you can see, there's not an awful lot of options in this particular version of Cleanflight that I'm running. You can see that you just basically need to make sure that this is ticked and green, and make sure your Failsafe throttle is set to 1000. If it's not, set it, click save and reboot. The Vendetta will reboot, flash up, and then you can confirm that those settings have taken. Try again with your testing, and you should be good to go. So yeah, as I say, not much to look at in Cleanflight. So yeah, give it a go. So that just about wraps up this video of configuring the XSR Mini on the Vendetta and the FR Sky for Failsafe. Took a little bit longer than expected, ran into some issues as you've seen, but all in all it's quite a successful little task. Should be good to go for the race on Saturday and Sunday, and I'll video as much of that as I possibly can and let you guys know how I get on there. Thanks for watching, make sure you subscribe if you like my videos, and I'll see you next time.